Hey, howdy, and welcome, kids. It is time, once again, for Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox for the week of December 11th. I'm so grateful we're in December, and it's a slightly less intense month than the last few, but this week's going to be a little something, Zoe. This is the week of all of the weeks of December. This is the week that has the most juice because we've got a new moon and Mercury going retrograde.
I was about to say Mercury retrograde. That's
Yeah.
the common culprit.
Right. And in fact, it is a slim month. So in fact, while, the new moon is tomorrow and then Mercury goes retrograde on Wednesday, that's really it in terms of, outside of the standard things that I don't really talk about on the podcast here. So it's the juiciest week of a quiet month.
Great.
But first, a question. Greetings, Michael and Zoe. This is actually a cute little opening, so you might appreciate this. Michael's insight is brilliantly presented each week. I love that. Thank you, Lisa Marie. I always smile when your hee-hee with that fabulous laugh erupts because there's a hint of the juiciness that's coming. And this is great. I laughed out loud when I heard Zoe's hee-hee mimic Michael's recently. Gotta love people who live with humor in their hearts. I thought that was cute. I always love reading the extra stuff in the question emails. I'd be curious to understand a bit about the significance of AC and MC degrees. She means ascendant and midheaven. AC, ascendant. MC is not, medium coli is actually the Latin name for midheaven, but I don't even know what coli means in Latin. But anyway, top of the drive.
I don't know.
Yeah, neither do I suppose I could look it up. My AC is 0 degrees Libra. My MC is 0 degrees Cancer. I'm going to say it differently. My rising sign is 0 degrees Libra. My midheaven is 0 degrees of Cancer. On other birth charts, I haven't seen the exact degrees on the AC and MC. Can you kindly speak to the degrees of ascendant and midheaven in birth charts? Enormous thanks, Lisa Marie. So actually, there's sort of two questions being addressed here, both of which I think I have talked about before, but I'll point out that 0 degrees of Aries, 0 Cancer, 0 Libra, and 0 Capricorn are really significant degrees. They're called the world axis points. And when the Earth and the Sun are aligned with one of these 4 degrees, we have a solstice or an equinox and the beginning of one of our seasons. So, in fact, at Lisa Marie, it is rare to have a world axis is at all 4 of your angular points. So just hold on to that idea. I'll come back. I'll circle back to that. That's rare. When we know the time of birth, we automatically generate, or astrology automatically generates the degree point at the rising sign and the midheaven based on the latitude and longitude of your birth. That's why we need to know what city you were born in and the time of day. Once we know that, the calculations that generate a chart, which is today done by a computer. If I was older, I might know how to do this by hand and have a different sort of answer about how these angles are configured. But once we know what's at the eastern horizon, we also then know what's at the midheaven. If we know the horizon, the eastern horizon, then we know the western horizon. The opposite point is the descendant. And that's just automatic. Like I'm a 22 degree Sagittarius rising. That means my descendant is 22 degrees of Gemini, opposite sign. So in Lisa Marie's case, then her midheaven is 0 degrees of Cancer. Then the opposite 0 degrees of Capricorn as her imum coli, the bottom of the chart. This is automatic because they are opposites. So the minute we know the time and the latitude and longitude of birth, we have 4 angles. The rising and its opposite, the midheaven and its opposite. So that's the 4 cardinal points of the chart. Then in Placidus' house system, there's a calculation that divides each quadrant down into 3 parts that become the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, the 4th, 5th, and 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, right? Just to repeat, the moment we know the time and the latitude and longitude of your birth, that automatically says this was at the eastern horizon, its opposite point was at the western, this point was immediately above us, and that point below was immediately opposite that. We have these 4 signs. There's a calculation that divides it into 12 houses, and there's your chart. This is why it's important to know the time of birth to effectively work with your birth chart, because it sets it up in the way that it is naturally read in astrology. The fact, Lisa Marie, that your angles are at world access points sets you up to have an interesting relationship to the world at large. Perhaps you're someone who thinks a lot about the world in a way that is more like being in it than of it. You might feel more impacted by world events at a larger intensity than your compatriots who don't have such an orientation. Certainly, if somebody came to me with such placement in their birth charts, and I've seen it, it is rare, we'd be talking about what your relationship with the world is. I always tell this joke because I read a woman during the OJ trial back 100 years who had 0 degree Cancer Jupiter. So that means her planet of expansion and abundance was at a world axis point, 0 degrees of Cancer. And she laughingly told me that when the OJ trial was happening, she couldn't leave the house. She was so obsessed with the OJ trial, she couldn't stop watching it. Right? So it would be easy to be like, well, world access point, you're going to be famous. It's like, no, maybe you just won't be able to leave the house when the OJ trial comes on, right? But you see the connection, Zoe?
Yeah.
That a connection or a drive to be aware of something in the outside world might connect with the 0 degree of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And all 4 angles at those points means you've got some relationship to the world at large that is a more direct sort of impact alignment with how you feel, how the world feels, might reflect each other more viscerally. New moon in Sagittarius tomorrow, kids. We start up a new lunar cycle, which means we're putting this last one to bed. The lunar cycle we're coming out of was generated by a new moon in Scorpio. So the entire 4 weeks had a drive connected to Pluto's rulership of the lunar cycle. Scorpio is the sign ruled by Pluto that's all about death and rebirth, change and transformation. So we are, in fact, coming out of a deeply expansive lunar cycle on an interior perspective. You know, Scorpio says, turn within, die to self, be reborn. When the sun changed signs and moved out of the Scorpio mansion and into Sagittarius, roughly 3 weeks ago, our conscious awareness shifted ownership over to Jupiter. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Jupiter and Sagittarius are therefore all about all of the yummy, all of the expansion, the desire to learn and grow and move and explore. It's the sign of the spiritual seeker because that Sagittarian archer just wants to collect all the data and all the information that it can. And so when we're in this mansion and we come to the new moon in Sagittarius, we want to set intentions for all of the Jupiterian and Sagittarian things that we desire. All of the movement, growth, education, travel, expansion, all the desires that you could have for more, you want to put into this new moon. There's an old quote from Bette Midler, who was purported to say, I want it all, and I want it delivered. That to me is always stuck in my mind as a kind of a Jupiter new moon kind of consciousness, because Jupiter and Sagittarius tell us that we can have it all. And so this is an intention setting moment where you want to just dial into that idea. I like the fact that Mars is conjunct this new moon, and he was conjunct the last new moon, but in a completely different sign. Last month, when the sun and the moon got together in Scorpio, Mars was in Scorpio. That put the intention-setting mojo right into our bodies. So this is sort of abstract rather than predictive, but I believe, my sense is that a new moon connected close to the planet that rules our choices and actions and behaviors, embodiment, put the power of the new moon and the power of the intentions right into our little bodies as we march forward. So both the sun and Mars have moved now into Sagittarius. So now the planet of embodiment is also aligned with, wait, I want more, I want this, I want that, I want a little piece from every column. And being 7 degrees away from the new moon, then Mars's capacity to act and choose and move forward powerfully is right there, receiving the impulse to move forward from the new moon intention setting sort of mojo. I think the strongest ancillary energy that's part of this new moon is the square that it's forming with Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is our spiritual connection. That's why we call Neptune the Great Spirit. But the shadow of Neptune is lack of clarity, not knowing. First of all, Sun square Neptune is like moving through a wall and a bank of fogs and cloud. I think I meant clouds and fog. Right? Sun is our conscious awareness, and Neptune represents our unconscious, through which we connect to spirit and guidance and intuition and flow. So when the geometry is a hard square, then what kicks up is deep confusion about where we may want to go next. Now, the exact square between the sun and Neptune was, 4 days before the new moon tomorrow. So this would have hit like, if you're listening to this when it comes out, like Friday. So we're past the wall of fog that this transit generated in terms of our day to day, but it's still held as part of the new moon intention setting mojo. One of the things that I like to do more with full moons than new moons, because it makes more sense, as I think you're about to see, is that I like to encourage people to work with powerful generalities in language. So if a full moon, for example, offers a particular kind of release, and you're sitting there going like, well, I'm not sure what I need to focus on letting go of, I will say this in my daily writings. I'll say this, and I've said this on podcasts and other places. You could say something like, I release everything that would inhibit my path forward, known and unknown, conscious and unconscious. And that's where the juice is, known and unknown, conscious and unconscious. You can do the same thing with your intentions during this new moon, where you know that Sagittarius energy is offering you all that in a bag of chips, like everything you could possibly imagine that you desire is held by Jupiter and Sagittarius. So that if you walk into a candy store and there's too many choices and you flip out from that, I know I do. I don't like too many choices. I've Mars and Libra. I shut down when there are too many choices. You could set an intention in a new moon in Sagittarius that has this cloudy, shadow of Neptune really powerfully built into it, and say something like, I set intentions for powerful expansions in all ways, those that I know in my heart and those that have yet to be revealed. I follow the impulse towards more, and I trust that I am deserving, and so it is. Right? There's powerful intention-setting language right there that doesn't require clarity about what you want to have next. Now, some of you know what you want to have next, and that's great. Just put it into your intentions and just also understand that, at least certainly for this lunar cycle ahead, there may be more moments when what you desire bumps into the I don't know how to make it happen consciousness. And that's just one of those moments where you have to say, well, you may not know how to make something happen, but there's a part of you that does. And there your prayer becomes, I now tap into the part of me that knows, and I allow it to lead, and so it is. Right? That's another way of using intention-setting language that respects the fact that we don't always have clarity. Now, clarity or not, the new moon is trining the north node of the moon, which means there's a momentum to the intention-setting energy of this time. The north node holds our future. The orb of influence is 3 degrees, which means it's very tight. Sun and moon at 20 of Sag and north node at 23 of Aries. So that's a tight trine. So it does mean that the intentions we set, even the ones that we say we're not really clear about, have the capacity to usher us forward with ease and grace. Mars and Chiron are trining, and both, Mars is close to the north node and Chiron is close to the new moon. So this becomes a stellium where Sun, Moon, and Mars is trining both the north node and Chiron. And that gives us the confidence that we're able to move forward at this time more powerfully because we've been doing some deep healing work. And this is when it counts. So it's like all of the deep dives that you've done over the last 6 months or so have cleared out some space in your deep, inner life places where wounds hold us back. And so to whatever extent we can know this consciously, we are more healed today than we were yesterday. And so this new moon takes advantage of that as well. And the last thing I'll say about the background geometry is that there's a very tight inconjunct from the new moon to Uranus. 1 degree orb of influence, 20 degrees, remember, Sag? That's where the sun and moon are. And Uranus is at 19 degrees, 55 minutes of Taurus. That is such a tight 150-degree angle. And you know me, guys, I like the precision. It's the most precise angle of all of the ways in which the outer planets are participating in this new moon. And so it's a fork in the road moment, right? So we are setting intentions now. We have to be willing to let our path forward be fluid, flexible, and include lots of pivots. Uranus says, oh, you thought you were making a left, we're making a right. And our response to that, especially for the lunar cycle ahead, is not to fight and argue with the path. The path may send you in unexpected directions in the next 4 weeks. Let it. And not for nothing, today, tomorrow, likely to be intense emotionally and energetically because we've got this very fiery new moon. And then sort of stuck in the middle there, not really making contact with any of the players I've mentioned so far. Venus in Scorpio, that already sets us up for a much deeper emotionality because of that sign's depth and intensity, is in a fairly tight opposition with Jupiter in Taurus. Now, that's a dynamic, lovely opposition when you think that the people holding it is love and abundance. Not people, planets, obviously, but the planet of love and the planet of abundance in an opposition is a dynamic, undeniable, and now I'm going to add deep, intense, and over the top emotional setup. I like it for the new moon piece because if our hearts are ready to go to deep and intense places when faced with the idea of what we might want to create for abundance, Venus opposed Jupiter, then we grab the joyful exuberance of the Sagittarius archetype and say, bring it. And like Bette Midler, I want it all and I want it delivered. Yeah, the big challenge of the month is gonna be Mercury's retrograde, and it starts tomorrow. So just a reminder of the dates of the retrograde shadow period, what I like to call the brochure, the period where we got clued into all of the communication challenges that might rise up again now that Mercury's going retrograde tomorrow, was from November 25th up to and including tomorrow. So from November 25th through like tomorrow, all of the issues that we're likely to bump into between Wednesday and really January 1st next year, because Mercury will be retrograde as we cross over the threshold of the new year. We got all the clues that we could need between November 25th and when Mercury turns around on Wednesday. So if you haven't done this yet, you might want to sit down and just think about the last 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. What tripped you up? What thoughts were problematic? What conversations or negotiations were difficult? Because they're likely to come up between Wednesday and the end of the month. You know, all of the Mercury retrogrades this year have been in Earth signs, and this is no different. This Mercury retrograde takes place in Capricorn.
Hmm.
So, what I love about a full year where all of the Mercury retrogrades are in Earth signs, it means that we've really been changing and altering our perception of physical reality. Earth signs are about form. We live in a world of form. If we're in air signs, we're thinking about form. In water signs, we're feeling about the forms. In fire signs, we're tearing forms down and building new ones. But in earth signs, we're just in the idea of we live in a physical reality. And how we experience that reality is through our perceptions. Mercury retrogrades are opportunities to change our perceptions. This is why we pay attention to the dates, kids. It's not just so that you don't fall down a pit on a Thursday. It's also so that you can contextualize your experience in the pre so that the during experience can be transformative for you. And the more you are aware of what you're working with, the more powerful that transformative process can be. I love the fact that as we cross the new years and part of setting intentions for the new year, we'll have Capricorn featured, right? It's the Capricorn mansion at the end of this month. The new moon next will be in Capricorn. Capricorn is the goals and ambitions sign. So in some ways, the idea of crossing over into the new year and setting intentions for the year ahead is very much a Capricorn archetype thing. So I like the fact that as we cross over the threshold, our thinking will be more internal and contemplative because Mercury will be retrograde. I'll also throw this in that I think people don't understand or get fully the deep spirituality of this sign. You know, we think of the sign as just the attainment of the goal and reflecting Saturn's demand that we have responsibility and discipline as part of our experience. And the goat does climb the mountain, and the avatar succeeds, and so we project into that sign that act. The goat climbs the mountain, so do we. But why? Why is the goat climbing the mountain? You could say to get to the top, and that's true and accurate. But what happens when we get to the top of the mountain of our inner sort of consciousness is that we see further. We have great vantage point when we're perceiving things from a high place. And Capricorn teaches us to keep climbing the mountain of our desires, but that as we get higher and higher, we should sort of feel that we also have more and more wisdom and awareness and the maturity that comes from experience. And I think that that's deeply spiritual. And I'll leave you with this about Mercury's retrograde. There are 4 triple transits that he's making. So remember, these have already been made in the 3 weeks behind us, and they will happen again only Mercury's facing within, so we're going to bump into the furniture a little bit. A trine to Jupiter is all about expansion, climbing that mountain, seeing further. I love the idea that in a lunar cycle that's driven by Jupiter's rulership, that a Mercury retrograde is touching Jupiter at a time when it sort of counts. So the retrograde itself can be very expansive for us. A sextile to Saturn means that the teacher's part of this. And if we're using our wisdom, because sextiles need action, they're just potential till you put some action. Any effort we put into learning and growing and utilizing Saturn's sort of quest for wisdom will pay good dividends. Now, there's also a sesqui square to Uranus and a square to Neptune. And those are both shit show setups for a Mercury retrograde. A square to Neptune is just pure cloudiness, confusion, and the fog bank, tripping us up. And a sesqui square, which is mild friction, to Uranus means lots of, and I mean lots of, pivots, changes, sudden things. And I'm going to guess lots of interruption in your technology and your computers and everything else. Yeah. And you and I know this, so because we bumped into challenges in Mercury retrogrades with technology. I'm telling you, nobody can prove to me that Mercury retrogrades aren't a thing because I watch it happen in my computer. At any rate, the day is Wednesday. Pay attention. You've got this. Have at it. So until Venus gets back into Leo, which happens next summer, I'm going to talk about Venus's movements because they count more so than what is typical. Venus went retrograde in Leo this past year. And so much happened in our experience of our emotional bodies and our giving and receiving of love process that we want to acknowledge that as Venus moves around the ecliptic, she's delivering the wisdom from that retrograde. So even though the retrograde is way behind us, everything that Venus does between this past sort of summer and fall through next summer when she returns to Leo, because don't forget, she also ruled the eclipse season we just came out of by ruling both the new moon and the full moon. So it just becomes important, and I want you guys to know that Saturday and Sunday over the weekend, there's something interesting where Venus will square Neptune on Saturday, and that's a kind of confusing uncertainty around love and relationships. So anybody who's in a high-stakes relational narrative might move into this weekend and be confronted by insecurity, doubt, fear, not knowing, I'm not sure, I can't feel the love, some confusion around love. The very next day, Sunday, Venus will hit Chiron in the great eliminator angle. And I think these two transits together make this upcoming weekend interesting for those of you who are in a high-stakes relational sort of negotiation this weekend. Might bring both a bit of confusion followed by a healing to release something that's no longer serving. Like, this is not going to happen to everybody, but this is kind of like on Saturday, you're like, oh, he's just not that into you. And then on Sunday, it's like, I think I'll let it go. So keep that in mind as you move through the weekend. Respect Mercury's turnaround on Wednesday. Set powerful intentions in the new moon on Tuesday and have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully, your dream will make it onto the show. All right. So this week we have an email and dreamer named Bailey, and she says, "Good morning, Michael and Zoe," and then questions the spelling of my name, which actually we get this a lot. My name is Z-O, no E.
I love actually because you know what? I've seen it as Z-O, Z-O-E, Z-O-E-Y, which is Zoe. So thank you for clearing that up. So I love that everybody now knows we spell your name Z-O. I've always known that.
Real short and
Our
sweet.
listeners have that.
Okay.
Real short.
This dream is like, I feel like it might be straightforward, but I'm not sure. So it's very psychological, I think. Bailey says, "I just woke up from a strange dream and would love to know what you think. I was walking through a field and into a small cottagey room with my mother." This is a dream mother, not her real life mom. "Already in this room was a boy, maybe 12 years old, who worked for my mother on this farm. And I knew he enjoyed working on cars, but he'd never spoken to me before. Why my mother would have someone so young working, I don't know. She went out to do something, and the boy noticed a small cross stitch on the dresser that said something to the effect of, 'Oh, that God had brought me a son instead of a daughter.'"
Oh my Lord.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, honey. Now I know why you picked this dream. I love this.
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh, that God had brought me a son and not a daughter. Okay.
Instead of a daughter.
Instead of a daughter.
Yeah.
Right.
He spoke to me for the first time to point this out and said, "Dang, I'm so sorry your mom feels that way about you. I think you should know." I got the impression that from that point on, we would have a rapport, and he went to go work on something. I found a pair of old-looking clippers on the dresser that I knew my mother had used to give the boy a haircut. I stepped outside the room in a very tall field and began shaving my head. As I began to do so, I see my aunt, again, this is a dream aunt, come into the room and do some touch ups on her already shaved head. She had much better clippers than I do and had obviously been doing this for years. As I stand shaving my head, I'm in front of a very old, rusted out combine that hasn't been used in a long time and has tall brush growing around it. I'm up to my chest in this tall brush. I look down to see I have tons of gnats and bugs all around me. And I think in the dream about how long it's going to take me to find all the ticks later. And I'm really wearing the wrong clothes to be in this overgrown field. As I continue there shaving my head, my dad walks up. So this is her real life dad and dream dad. And he is appropriately dressed to be in this brush. He just learned that June bugs are an invasive species and we should be squishing them while we're here. He doesn't seem to notice that I'm shaving my head and doesn't make a comment. Bam. Then she wakes up.
Damn.
Yeah, so I thought that was a very interesting and psychological dream. And she gives us a context note that
Oh, good.
she does have androgenic alopecia. So her hair is thin in many areas. And she was talking about that with her husband right before going to bed. So there's a little context from Bailey.
Okay. Wow. Oh my. This is one of those dreams where I'm thrilled that you brought it forward, but it's one of those dreams where it's like, I kind of wish we had Bailey here.
Mm. Yeah,
Okay,
I
I'll
hear
just speak
you.
out loud,
Yeah.
right? I'll just speak out loud, right? Right. We can still make sense of it if I just share. Like, here's how my mind is working right
Yeah.
now, right? Like, so it's like, okay, there's a message from a dream mother that sort of says something's fundamentally off for Bailey to explore. But what we don't know is, how much of this is about gender and, was there really a wish? It happens all the time where kids are born into families where there was a desire for a gender that they didn't fit, and that becomes a theme they take on. So I don't know if this is literal for Bailey. And we certainly understand that the hair and the shoring of it might be about finding a kind of a power that isn't in luscious, yummy hair, right? Beautiful hair is the power of attractiveness and vibrancy out in the world that other people see and notice. There's also hair as strength that comes to us in the West through the Samson myth. So because we don't have some of the specific like details of Bailey's story with her mom, let's sort of parse out some of the symbol stories, right? So we're walking through a field. I always go to heart chakra anytime someone's dream starts in a natural setting that's going to be green, like a field, right? Place in nature, the heart chakra's color is green. The earth is green, and we are children of the earth. So walking through a field into a small cottage to me is about, I'm in my heart, and I'm thinking about who I am as I live in my heart. A cottage is a self-image, right? It's a home. But it's like this field, this cottage in a field. I don't think it's Bailey's waking life home. She's in the home of her heart. Another reason why I'd want Bailey here is, like, I want to know what happened 12 years ago,
Oh,
right? You
yeah.
got a
Okay, I didn't even think about that.
12-year-old boy. Then I want Bailey, who I'm assuming is listening, consider some consciousness that is 12 years old. Alternatively, sometimes in dream work, I'll say also consider what was going on when you were 12.
Right.
There's got to be something about mother and father in this because mother has an objection to Bailey's sort of presentation and dad doesn't, or at least he's sort of neutral towards the end of the dream. That's interesting. I don't know how to interpret that except to say that the sort of she doesn't really actually say like that dream mother had an objection to the haircutting, right? There's nothing about that. It doesn't even cross paths, right?
It's like the cross stitch was like, "Oh, I wish I had a son," kind of, but
Oh,
the
right.
mom
I'm so
never
sorry. Right. So,
addresses the
okay,
hair.
right.
Yeah.
Got it. So, all right. So we have some fundamental role that Bailey's playing in life that somehow mom didn't get or didn't see or didn't align with, and dad is more either supportive or neutral or somewhere in that direction. So, but back to this 12-year-old idea that this character inside of Bailey's psyche is so interesting. I think it's a masculine character, right? It's a boy, so it's all about doing and action and who am I going to be out in the world. This kid can fix cars. That means it's a part of Bailey that's helpful in terms of how she does, in fact, maneuver around the world. Cars are a symbol of how we move publicly and engage with our community because we use cars to drive around the community. So if this 12-year-old aspect of Bailey enjoys working on cars but has been mute up to now, then we know that he's a part of Bailey's psyche that's been powerful and important. He's been there to help get her moving somehow. So now we have an idea that the dreamer, the witness in the dream, is acclimating to something in her psyche that's newly discovered but has been there all along. He reveals a kind of secret. Like, I think you should know this. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Now I want to internalize this new piece of information. The literal information of this dream is mom rejected you.
Right.
Mom rejected you because she wanted a boy. So I don't know if that's literal, right? Because we don't have Bailey here to say so. so that we know that some revelatory experience of who Bailey's being right now is so identity shifting. The dream shows us doing probably the most dramatic thing a person can do to alter their appearance. And for a woman, I think it has even more weight because we associate women and hair and attractiveness and the cutting off of it as a signal that something's like not right. But in this dream, Bailey's shoring seems to be aligning with some right organic self-perception. So it's like the cutting off of the hair in the dream seems to be Bailey aligning herself to have her presentation match this awareness. I think this is the psychological aspect of the dream that attracted you to it. So I'm just not sure I could give you like the satisfying wrap up, without a little bit more distinction.
I feel like you need to call Bailey.
Well, listen, who knows? Bailey will listen to this and we'll see how she responds. Bailey, please feel free to let us know how close I am to feeling like I'm landing on something that you identify with.
Send some notes, yeah.
So the dream ant is interesting to me, right? Because an ant is like a mother, but on the side. So there's a sense of maternal care in an ant avatar that is familial, but free of the motherly dynamics that can interfere, the private shadow challenges between mother and child don't exist in aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
Similarly, grandparents, right? Grandmothers offer a level of nurturing that they probably weren't capable of giving to their children. So there's something about the ant that says, okay, I'm going to return to a sense of maternal care and be, touched up. Like the ant comes in and helps as if to say, I approve of this. Like the ant says, I approve of this presentation, and the dad ipso facto does as well. Maybe not directly, but by him not objecting to the haircutting at the end, then the dream ends with a kind of two themes for me. One is an acceptance of this message of I'm going to free myself somehow by removing my hair, and then maybe I'll be able to attend to all of the other chaos that my current life has to offer. The gnats, the bugs, the wrong clothes, the danger of ticks, right? So the mother energy of this dream is, I reject you. And the father energy says, dress like me, and you'll be able to meet life on life's terms. Now, what Bailey makes of this, I can't know, but that's the best I could do with the dream from the images and the story that it speaks to me.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.